Hey everybody, thanks for joining me. I am super excited today. First off, I'm with my friend Richard.
Hello, Will.
He is here. We are on site at his place of employment, and we are utilizing his awesome scanner to get all my pages for my next issue of my comic book, 120 or so pages done. So we're on site, which is why the background's a little different, and so we're at a table in his workspace, and he brought some things he picked up recently, and I'm a little mad at him because now I'm going to have to go home and spend money on these things because I absolutely have to have this. We've got this, and we've got this we're going to be looking at, and I knew they existed, and I thought that I could resist having them. That has all changed now that I took a brief look at them. These are must-haves, especially if you're an artist, a maker. I mean, Richard, are you on the same page?
Yeah, once I knew they existed, I had to get them. There's one that I know exists. I cannot literally find a copy out there anywhere.
Which one?
It's the Max.
Oh, yes.
Artist edition.
Yes.
I know it exists. I've seen pictures from it.
Yep.
I cannot find a copy anywhere, not even at used book dealers, nowhere.
You'd think it would show up somewhere sometime, but...
Well, I've got to search for it on eBay right now. Hopefully it pops up, and I will spend whatever it costs to get it.
Right, yeah. When you have these art books, especially if you're a creator, I mean, as a fan, as just a regular comic book reader, I imagine these things are interesting, but it must hold a much more significant interest for you if you are someone who actually creates. And this is special to me because unlike so many artists today, I still just do ink on paper, and that's what all of this is. These are faithful, complete, just straight scans of the original art, and to see you could see the hand-touched craft that goes into these things. Like just looking at the cover, you can see like the ink line, the ink on the Venom figure. I hope it shows up on camera versus in the hands. It's much more faded. And then down here on Spider-Man's head, you can see some whiteout. You can see the blue pencil line. Some of the shadows he does in the debris here is obviously, I mean, it probably a Sharpie, I'm guessing, which is why it's so faded after so much time. But I love that stuff.
Yeah,
that's
absolutely.
The interesting stuff. It's so crazy cool to see. So anyway, Todd McFarlane's Spider-Man edition. I mean, you don't really need me to explain a size difference from this book versus a comic book, but there's a difference. It's the same size as that Jim Lee Extra Large one that I did a video on a while ago. Huge book, which gives them the opportunity to show the artwork at the actual original size that it was created at. Let's just start by flipping this open here. And this is one of the smart things that they need to do is this inside cover. Just do a big close-up of some of the work just to utilize this space, right?
It's just a beauty thing to behold.
It is. It's still funny to see like these things where the shadows on this piece of rock and debris versus the much pure, unfaded black line work of the other stuff. You can see how he probably goes back in there with obviously some non-archival work. It's so damn huge. It's so big. Like, I'm not a small guy. I'm 6'3". I'm a big guy. Look at my giant hands are dwarfed by this giant book. So were you always a Todd McFarlane fan? Is that something that you were into as a young reader?
I appreciated Spawn. That was my introduction to Todd McFarlane.
Right.
But I like, as much as I'm not a Spawn fan, I love his like mix of cartoony and realistic.
Right.
I don't know how he does it.
Yes. He's definitely got his stuff is always amazing to look at, even if
and so this Spider-Man stuff, I'd always heard he'd done it. It wasn't until recently that I'd read his entire run.
Right. And I didn't really notice McFarlane until he got onto just that Spider-Man book. It wasn't, it's not Amazing Spider-Man or Spectacular or The Web of Spider-Man. It's just that one Spider-Man book that he got on his own. That's when I really I'd seen his work, but I hadn't paid attention to it. But that's when I started looking, and that's when I was starting to really getting into drawing as a teenager. And it took me a minute to like force myself to pay attention to what an artist he is. But these things, I mean, it's awesome because these are like, you got this pure white paper and then this faded yellow old artwork, which is, I wonder if it's got a date on it. It says April, but I'm sure this is in the 80s, the late 80s. Oh, this one right here says April 1988. So, and we were talking about this, Richard. It's I'm sure maybe some people out there probably have an understanding of, but when they take the original artwork and send it in to, I guess they back in the day they'd have to photograph it.
Yeah, well, they send it to a photo, well, to the printer, and the printer uses a photochemical process to transfer that.
Okay. But they cut the holy crap out of the paper. They just chop it up for whatever reason to fit it, to make it work. And so it's just kind of disheartening to see this original artwork, like the disrespect treated to the artwork. Because there was a time when they wouldn't even give artists their original artwork back. There was a big to-do about Jack Kirby. Like he'd do all the artwork and they'd just keep it and a lot of times throw it away.
Yeah.
They'd actually discard it, and they had to like have somebody make a big old stink, like give the work back to the creator. But this is just fascinating to see these. Like this is as close to original artwork as you'll ever get. Like just like here's some of my own work right here, so you can see that this is an 11 by 17 board, and you can see how it's the same size. That's the scan. So they got this big surface area around it. So you can see the whole thing in its original size. And that is just super fascinating to me. I feel embarrassed putting up my own artwork next to Todd McFarlane. Even his old stuff, like this is much more just, it's super less detailed than he would get to. There's some of the black costume Spider-Man later on in the book. And it's not saying that that's bad. It's just interesting how he's kind of changed how he'd do things.
Well, yeah, this is much closer to the old style of comics, but it's still punched up a little. Yeah.
Like this pose, like you never saw any of the old classic artists draw Spider-Man posed like that. And that looks really awesome. I think that looks so good. And this is a big book, so there's a lot to get through. So no disrespect to the man's older work, which is good, but not quite the same as his newer stuff that I can't wait to get into. So I might kick through these first pages a little bit quicker. This is interesting. You can tell he obviously took like a photo from somewhere and probably photocopied it. Sometimes I hear they'll photocopy them a couple of times to get it grainy.
Right.
And then they, I don't know, put that down and then cut this out and put it on top.
Yeah, every time you photocopy something, the quality reduces.
Yeah, every little imperfection becomes a bigger imperfection, becomes a bigger. That's really neat. And then you can see just all like the whiteout marks, the paste up lines. It's interesting how when it's reproduced in the final version, it looks practically flawless. That is one of my favorite pictures of Spider-Man. That angle, it's like all these different angles of things kicking different ways, and it just has motion and movement. And then, of course, he's famous for his giant spaghetti webbing.
Right.
Made it look uniquely his.
Well, and you pointed out that little tiny webbing that he did in the letters section.
Yeah.
On that other video.
Yeah.
And after that, I had to try it.
The little spider web and then the little spider hanging there.
It's so fun to draw those.
It is. It's so simple and just get a nice little ink line. I farted with that trying to do it for a long time. Look at the just giant chunks of the page is just chopped right out of it. It's so weird. Like I said, this is all really good stuff. I like it, but he hasn't quite become. I don't think he hasn't been fully released. Like I think he's still working under heavy editorial guidance and house style restrictions a little bit.
A big splotch of.
Yeah, you might like
out right
drop
there.
some gobble of ink on there or something like that. And you got to wipe that stuff over. And I think also part of this, I've heard some other guys who reviewed artist books. You see, like these are both scans of the originals, but look at how faded yellow this is, and how still crisp white this is. It's still got the yellowing on the edges, so it makes you think that the person that has this page. Because I assume they have to go out and find the people that have these and say, hey, get us a scan of it so we can put it into an artist edition. And you could tell there's some people that probably preserve theirs with more care versus
This has probably seen the sun more than this one.
Seen a lot of sun. Maybe somebody has it just sitting out on their table and they're heavy smokers.
Or it's under non-UV glass hanging on the wall.
Yeah. And so it gets this faded yellow. And it still makes it interesting, but you can tell like somebody's put in more effort to preserve some of these. The Prowler. That's the villain in that first Spider-Verse movie, right? You know what the
I know who you're talking about.
Yeah, the Prowler, which I've heard. I'm probably going to go tomorrow. The new one.
Yeah,
I've heard it's fantastic. My older brother said he's like, go see it immediately.
When they were first working on it, the guys that are over the technology that they said, you thought the first one was impressive, like, and this was back when they were just getting started. This second one blows the first one out of the water.
And I was worried. I've talked to some of my friends about this. The directors of the first movie, I can't remember the names, but it's a brother pair, if I remember correctly. They did the Lego movie.
Yeah.
And I like them. They have a really interesting sense of timing and
comedy
and adventure and everything. They did the 21 Jump Street movies, which are some of my favorite comedies ever. And they don't do this one. And it's kind of like the Lego movie. The first one was brilliant. The second one was nothing.
Yeah.
So I was worried, is this new Spider-Man going to be good?
Mm-hmm.
But apparently it's
I've heard
amazing.
You can see the beginnings.
Proto Spawn, right?
So spawny there.
Yeah, mask, kind of the same pointy thing going on, big cape. He's like, I'm going to take that and we're going to ratchet it up to level 27. Yeah, you were right about that. Let's keep going here. I should mention, this is irrelevant, but if anything sounds a little different on this one, Richard has access to mics, so we're actually using mics for our audio this time. I'm really curious to how that's going to sound coming across. I'll be really disappointed if I get back and found I didn't record anything. Guess I just have to come back and do it again.
Oh, darn.
You might have to look through the Spider-Man art book again and talk about it again. Even his building and his cityscapes, even though it's just a straight on, there's no perspective here, but it works.
Well, there's perspective, but it's not multiple point perspective or 1 point perspective.
And this one
is just it's atmospheric perspective.
Mm-hmm.
In the details go back.
Yeah. But it works. I'm buying it. I sell it. Whatever he's selling, I'm buying.
That view of,
holy crap. Yeah, look at that. Obviously, like basic 1 point perspective, and this is where you take and just learn how to it's adding all those little details onto the buildings, just kind of faking it in some ways, just put some different varying geometric cube shaped patterns.
Yeah. But like doing a random pattern like that is even harder than you think.
It's not easy. Yeah.
Because you'll end up doing patterns. We're such a pattern based creature.
Right.
That doing random is hard.
That's a good point.
Such a Batman-y cape.
It really is. He loves his capes. Yeah. I really want to get into the later Spider-Man stuff. This is all looks so good. We could all sit here and just kind of oogle over it forever.
That's the exact word I was going
to use. You're going to do oogle? Again, another heavy blue line pencil in this stuff, which I guess when they photograph it, that's why they do the blue pencil. The blue doesn't copy.
Yeah, it's called, it's an old school printing thing. The reproduction printers did not pick up that blue.
Yeah.
And it's named non-repro blue.
Non-repro blue, yeah.
It doesn't reproduce.
And I would use that when I was first starting out because that's what I heard you do, but then you put it on a scanner and it picks up everything, so why waste my time?
Right.
This is a great splash page because it's just a big giant building and just Spider-Man's hands out there. Whenever I see a New York City library and the lions on the pedestals, you know what I think of?
Ghostbusters.
Ghostbusters, thank you. We didn't even prep that. I wondered if you thought the same thing as me. I've never been to New York, so I wouldn't know nothing. But from that movie, it's such a hyper focus right at the beginning. So that's what I think of. That's awesome. Yeah, I'm just going to start cooking through some of these here because
it's a big book.
It's a lot of work to get into. Not a bad looking female figure there. He can do it. He'll do some weird ones, but that's pretty good. And then look at this. That's him starting to just explode.
Yeah.
Big dynamic backgrounds. And he really feels like he's way up high. And he really looks like he's flung himself and he's really got a big sense of motion. I bet that took a minute to draw with all the
right
webbing everywhere. And then he's like, you know what? I'm so tired. I'm not going to get up my nice ink.
This is the one. So I saw all this on it, and there's other pages where he's just signed it, and it looks like it's that color.
Yeah.
So I wondered. So I pulled out the comic just to look, and those are black in the comic. It's not like something he doodled on later when he was signing it to sell it.
I just think it's a cheap Sharpie that fades.
I think
just that ink.
That was my initial reaction too.
Yeah.
Well, actually, the first time I saw it in the book, I thought, oh, he's using one of those gold Sharpies, but they didn't sell them that long ago.
Yeah.
That's a new thing. So that's definitely just faded marker.
Fades. Yeah, that's why you don't want to use them, because they turn to junk.
Yeah, it's in the hair here.
Yeah, it's interesting. It gives. You can definitely tell where they use that nice India.
Also, like sometimes I use that kind of a marker for an effect, because when they start to die,
you can get kind of a faded look.
You get kind of it's not a flat black, and you can get
true
cool effect in it.
I'm going to say something controversial, and I think I'm the only person maybe. I don't care for Venom's long, slithery tongue. I kind of like this streamlined version with just an evil grin. I think Eric Larson added the tongue, and now it's a defining characteristic trait of Venom. I don't hate it, but it's not my favorite thing. I kind of like this original McFarlane version, but yeah, here's another version of where somebody clearly is taking care of that page. Look at how crisp and clean this one is. And then that's a hell of a angle to draw him, like arm coming up towards you, body going way into the distance. He's just having fun with this page. Awesome Spider-Man shots over and over.
Right.
It's like, you know what his page rate on these books must have been? It must have been $200 per page, I think.
So good.
Yeah.
See, and this right here, this is the cartoony I'm talking about.
Yeah. He's always good with that cartoony.
But it like fits in with like everything else. It looks gritty and real, and
he's got a balance of things that just work. That is very McFarlane, and not a lot of people can do what he does. So let's see. This is June '89, so we're getting close to where he's going to start jumping onto his own Spider-Man book. He talked about how he wanted to do his own thing, and why not? He'd said in these interviews, because people are always giving him crap, especially even editorial. They're like, stop drawing the eyes big. Stop doing that.
The spaghetti webbing.
Don't do that spaghetti webbing, bud. but he's like, he would say to him, you hire me to sell comics. Nobody sells more books than me. What's the problem?
Right.
I don't care if all you old school guys don't care for it. I don't care. We're selling books. The kids love it. What's the problem? We're all making money. Like, I can understand an editorial group cherishing their character and being protective of it, and like wanting to make sure his legacy is not tarnished. But this isn't tarnishing anything. This is just exciting and awesome. So it's just interesting to hear him talk about how they would always give him pushback. Like, stop doing this, stop doing that. And he's like, Do you know, thinking about artists doing something the editors have told them not to do, I'll have to bring this up in another time, but do you know the story of Power Girl from DC Comics? Do you know the character?
I know the character.
Do you know have you ever noticed how she's always got a very big chest?
Yes.
Do you know the story behind that?
I don't.
From what I read, is that the artist, just as a gag, with every issue, she was kind of built structurally, physically normal, but he just, with every issue, would make her chest a little bit bigger, every issue, just to see how far he could take it. Eventually, editorial was like, stop it! What are you doing? Knock it off! And then artists, ever since then, to honor that guy, draw her with an enormous chest. I think that's the funniest thing, because I think about that with the Spider-Man eyes. He kept giving him bigger and bigger eyes, and they kept telling him to don't do that. So he just kept doing it. So anyway, I think that's one of the funniest things I've ever read. What a brilliant way. Like, some artists are like, I'm just going to keep doing it, and tough. Jeez.
I love
the
lettering.
Hand done. I wonder if that's McFarlane or the letterer doing that on top of the work.
Yeah,
I wonder.
I don't know. Just that kind of onomatopoeia.
I wouldn't be surprised. It could be, honestly, either way. I could see McFarlane doing that.
Yeah, I can too.
That badass pose right there. That's McFarlane at full power.
Well, and even this.
And that, even the little guy, yeah, all of them. God, we're not even halfway through.
Those 80s swimsuit.
It is very 80s.
Suits.
Is she supposed to have nylons on? Is this why there's all these little tick lines down her? It must be.
I don't know.
Because he doesn't put it on like what appears to be her bare arms, but it's only on it. So it must be like the only bare skin showing is her arms and legs, or her arms and head.
We can pull it up and look at the color.
Yeah, we can see the color version. Sorry, just the artist in me just keeps stopping and looking at the ink lines, because I do the Hunt 102 and brush work, which is what he does on all this stuff. And we were talking about this, Richard, how when you see it up close, it looks so much rougher and sketchy.
And you think, I can do that.
Yeah, but then once it's reduced down a little bit, and it becomes this tight, precise, crazy.
And you're like, how does he do that?
Yeah. So yeah, this is Amazing Spider-Man 320, page 10, according to the... I'll keep my hand on that page.
I'm pulling it up on the iPad.
Yeah. I'd be a little mad if I owned this page and you could tell he used the Sharpie on the blacks on the Spider-Man there. I bet you this is McFarlane lettering. It looks like it's done right on the board.
Yeah, it does. Well, and I'm always interested with all the stuff that's on the first page.
Right.
Like, sometimes there's like all kinds of, well, like in this.
Yeah, and you could tell that's pasted up. You could see the different paper, so that's pasted up. Maybe not.
I feel like sometimes it is and sometimes it isn't. It's depending on what they want to do.
Yeah. And sometimes McFarlane will draw kind of weird-looking women faces. They all don't have to be like perfect model-looking girls, but I mean, it is a comic book. There's Spider-Man. Poor guy, he didn't know he had his nose sheared off. Look at that panel. He has no nose. He's got a mouth, but no nose. That's kind of like a thing where you draw his mask and you never physically draw the nose, but you show him popping it up. He's like, he's sad because I got my nose chopped off fighting Scorpion or something.
Oh, I'm going the wrong direction.
Captain America. This to me looks like kind of like maybe a boring page, so he just couldn't help himself. He's got this guy stamping this paperwork, so he's like, I got to throw in a bunch of lines. I have to. I got to put lines somewhere, and it seems kind of unnecessary, and this big, weird mutant hand holding it. Not his best thing. I bet he wanted to get through this real fast.
I don't think I have that one on my iPad, actually. Oh, well.
McFarlane doing Hulk, which was always,
and he looks. He's doing the. I'm sorry, my mind has gone blank.
Well, he always was. He didn't do Hulk for very long, but he had a very popular run, very blocky. Like, look at this very squared off jaw.
Who's that other artist that did?
Keown?
No, it's not Keown. He looks like, to me, he looks like that like old school Hulk artist. And now that I have to talk about it, I've gone blank.
Yeah, you'll blank on it. You'll think of it later tonight.
I've got one hanging on my wall in my office at home. So
another thing McFarlane would do with Spider-Man that I always liked is when he threw Spider-Man into heavy shadow, made him look kind of almost sinister and dangerous. Like Spider-Man's like a bright, heroic character, but his costume is one that looks very heroic. But if you draw him right, just like his eyes glowing and put him in heavy shadow, he can look
dramatic lighting,
very dramatic and sinister in a way. And McFarlane really leans into that. I remember reading this in the original book where he's like, "Who are you?" He says, "I'm I'm Spider-Man," clearly riffing off the Keaton thing. I always thought that was funny.
That is funny. Hey, he's got a nose there too.
He does have a nose in the mask there. Kind of goes back and forth between having noses and knots, and that's okay. Noses and knots.
That's part of his spider powers.
Right. Big, giant, thick Hulk. Now, this is all drawn cityscape, but that took some time.
Yes. It absolutely did.
He really, like, obviously he's got his vanishing point. You know, I'm wondering, it's like, I wonder if it's just right on the edge of the page here, actually. It actually looks like it might be. Maybe. It's hard to say. But that clearly took some time. But you know what? It pays off. It looks good. Oh, yeah. This is when he had the cosmic powers. Because he blasted him in the face. And then there's a page missing here. But Spider-Man punched Hulk so hard it sent him into orbit. So he's up into space. And Hulk's like, well, I can hold my breath for a long time, but what else can he do? And then you see Spider-Man's hands grab onto him and blast him down back into the planet. And then I always like this big shot of Spider-Man standing here with this big, dark, scary Hulk hovering over him.
Kirby. Yeah. Jack Kirby.
You can remember Kirby? Oh, that's it.
I was just having a moment. Like I
didn't know who you were referring to, but now that you say it, I get what you're saying.
I think his Hulk looks very much like Kirby's Hulk.
Yeah. And then now we're getting into
Spider-Man.
The Spider-Man. This is where McFarlane was given full creative control.
And this is where he starts using larger paper.
And so, yeah, it's the size of it. Like you can see, this is the edges of the paper on the scan. But you get into this one, these things go right to the edge of the paper. So I didn't even know that. I mean, I've heard of twice-up pages that artists will use where it's huge. And I know some artists would do. I know Kirby did stuff like that, if I remember correctly. But so this is interesting. It's like the original is the image size he's drawn on is still roughly the 11 by 17, but typically on an 11 by 17, you do an art image size on a 10 by 15. There's an inch total space, top and bottom, and then on the sides, but
margins.
Right. But he is just margins be damned, right? And he's just going for it on his details. These pages, because this is when I started noticing McFarlane, and this stuff is just, it feels like just a whole leap into a whole new world for him. He gets into darker, more violent stuff, bloody, bullets ripping through bodies like this lizard here. This guy just unloads on him.
And this one's fun to watch because this Doom goes through that whole comic.
Right, yeah. It's
and
that
just seeing,
beating drum.
Yeah, and like some of them are drawn, some of them are photocopied. It's just interesting to see how he's done that.
Yeah, there's like, it looks like one even fell off.
Yeah.
Let's see if that's on the page, because you got the Doom, but then it's like a little blank thing. It says sound effects, so clearly they must have like just been pasting them up, repeating them. I love how he signs his name, not all the time, but here, and then he throws in the little like gold spider.
Yeah.
Next to his name. That's fun, because he didn't do it over here. And, did I mention to you, or did you hear me talk about McFarlane and his opinion on signatures on art?
I haven't heard that.
He talked about, because I was trying to come up with my own unique way to sign artwork, and some artists sign it in a way you can't read it.
Yeah.
And McFarlane was like, sign your name so people can read it, so they know who you are, so they know who to go seek out.
Yeah.
He's like, my name is legible, Todd McFarlane. And then you see some other artists, they have like a symbol or a shape, and like you can't decipher it. So if you go looking for that artist's work, you're like, I need that guy that signs his name in like a circle and a couple of squiggly lines. Who the hell is that?
Right.
And I'm like, once he said that, I'm like, I'm so stupid. And it's so obvious. Sign it so people can read it, so they know who you are and can go seek you out.
Yeah, I've got a messy signature and I've got an art signature. And
right.
my art one is far more legible.
And then he's just doing great, big, awesome, beautiful Spider-Man shots, the webbing everywhere. Lizard just being a violent monster. All of this stuff. This one was, I remember even reading it, it's kind of hard to decipher. Like, there's a leg and a tail. There's a hand. But I think the chaotic nature of it kind of actually helps in a way.
Yeah.
It's kind of hard to see.
It's selling the story.
It feels really like Spider-Man, like he's getting his ass kicked. Lizard was being way more violent than he'd ever encountered before. So Spider-Man just lashed out just to kick him. And Spider-Man never intentionally kick a villain onto a spike to kill him. This is just kind of the reaction and the
Well, I mean, Spider-Man punched the Hulk into space.
Right.
So Spider-Man is always holding back.
Well, but that was Spider-Man with cosmic powers.
Well, right, but I've read other things that just talks about how his power level is just
he's way stronger.
He's so strong, so he's always holding back.
Yeah, and so when he just kind of lashes out, and the consequence that the lizard gets stabbed, he didn't mean to do that. And he also does a thing where he gets super close up, like gets the camera view right in close on things. And that's another hard thing to do, to zoom in on something, but still have it be readable. So he's got fingers and then the rain dripping out, rain or blood. And I was like this, again, it's kind of, it's cluttered, but not in a way that I mean as a negative. Like heavy shadows, there's rain, there's blood, there's shredded costume, there's this spider sense going off because he's being tormented, as is the name of the storyline. And I have the hardest time doing long, skinny panels like this, these long vertical panels. These are, because again, it's hard to take a panel, this a little skinny thing, and then draw something inside it that you can tell what it is.
Right.
Close-up of the lizard's face. That's really cool, though.
To Dermot. Best. Todd McFarlane.
Big old spider on it, too. Man, these things are just...
Well, I like seeing these notes on the side, too.
Right, yeah. The
colors, flesh at leg tear, rain on Spidey.
Right. Remove copy off panel 3 when statting onto page 11. So that's interesting. He's like, remove the text. And yeah, just a little production notes. So Spider-Man, after getting his butt whooped, he's like recovering in a pile of garbage. And he takes the time to draw all this stuff. There's boxes and boards and junk and debris, and it feels like he's really like stuck in there.
And that's so hard to do.
He could do it. This texture, because this girl's wearing like a
leopard skin.
Like a leopard print, so he's got to get these leopard print. And again, long skinny panels. Like I'm kind of, what are we looking at here? Oh, that's someone's leg.
I think so.
I think.
And
no, this is not the girl. I know there's a girl coming up. This is Craven.
That's Craven.
Yeah. That's right.
But they're related, the two characters.
Yeah, they're linked together.
Yeah.
Because it's showing Craven here, but then you flip to the next page, because these are not every page he's done. But then there's...
And that's the issue that Todd McFarlane colored, too.
I can't wait to get to that one. Those colors were so weird.
Yeah, they're just wild.
I didn't pay attention to it when I first read it. It was just another book that I'm like, oh, this is interesting. But they're professionals. They know what they're doing, so I must be the one who doesn't
After reading that run and seeing how he did the colors on that, like I've paid far more attention to how they did colors on the old comics.
Right.
Because it's so different.
Yeah. McFarlane wanted to use every color in the toolbox, and he did on that issue.
But it was still the old school, like pre-computer era.
Right.
And so it just has there's a different way you have to go about it.
Yeah.
They used bigger blocks of like solid color. Because with the computer, you can color every little detail. And they were just using like markers and watercolors and
that'd be interesting.
So it's just a completely different method.
Yeah, I've always liked this page, these little like 6 or 9 panel grid, but like this, I always like this picture of Craven, like he's in silhouette, but the big like furry thing around his neck, these little drawings, the spears, all looks really cool. And this is a classic thing McFarlane does all the time, and I actually really like it. The side shot of a head, and then this is a lot of times it'll have multiple panels coming down, but the 2 images together, and he feels like he's really not having a good time. Like a little patch of his hair poofing out, cracked. The
eyeballs where the nipples should be.
I mean, you're like, we're focused. I don't know when I ever kind of imagined that Spider-Man's eyes were supposed to be glass, but something like that kind of tells you like that's what they're supposed to be. And so it makes you go, well, what were they supposed to be? But I love that. This top panel here where he's like flexing and ripping his bonds apart, I always thought that I really feel like the strength of him shredding him apart. And then the lizard just jumps right into it. Once again, he just boots him. It's kind of a repeat of that thing he did before where he just kicks and sends him flying. It's awesome to see an artist who's really talented and just see them unleashed and you get these books. I always love that shot, like the silhouette of his teeth and the shredded mask.
Oh yeah.
Again in heavy shadow. This is Spider-Man not having a good time. He's having a rough day of it. He portrays that really well.
And doing the teeth in 3D like that,
right?
Like lately, I've noticed, like in a lot of cartoons where they're doing a 3D to 2D thing, you get the teeth like that because it's a 3D object that's being rendered in a 2D manner. But the way they're doing it in these cartoons, like it weirds me out.
Yeah.
So to be able to do it in a graphic way in a comic,
yeah,
in a drawing that looks good like that.
Oh man. And then just give him Ghost Rider and do a double page spread.
I love that episode.
Bam.
Issue. I said episode. That's funny.
I know. I tend to do that a lot of times too. Geez, these look. I mean, Mark Texeira was doing Ghost Rider at this time, and that looked amazing. But you give McFarlane this guy, and you're like, oh.
And another Proto Spawn.
Oh, totally. Yeah. Shredded cape, debris. So neat looking. Let's keep it going. I've always loved this page. That there's a lot of like unnecessary lines everywhere, but it sells like it's so visually interesting, kind of puts you into the moment somehow. I don't know how to explain it, but that looks really good. Love that. And then this weird sketchy way of doing Ghost Rider here. I would never think to do that, but he obviously has got some kind of like secret magic trick that some of us don't.
And he does it frequently.
Yeah. Oh, look at this giant splash page of Wendigo pulling up that dead kid's body in the start of that storyline. And then this Spider-Man, holy crap. That looks so... Like getting the perspective of this leg and the foot coming towards you. Leg coming towards you, arm going back in the distance, webbing everywhere. I mean, my Spider-Man artist is Todd McFarlane. I mean, I know there's a lot of the classic guys, the Steve Ditkos, the guys who, Buscemi's and Kirby's did some, and everyone who did all kinds of work. But my Spider-Man, my favorite version of Spider-Man is McFarlane, and probably always will be, because he just brought something to it. Again, there's a heavy shadowed Spider-Man. That's really neat looking.
Might go back. These yellowy.
Yeah, something. Whatever that is.
Looks like
is that white out? But the white out. Did the white out go scuzzy?
I think the marker underneath that he whited out has leaked.
Oh,
through.
That would be interesting, because you could see some of it up in there. And
then on this next page, where they've pasted in an
actual newspaper stuff. It's another thing where he does a big super close up, like a hand holding a donut. The hand looks kind of weird, but
that's a very animation hand.
And McFarlane does these big, weird, clumpy, roundish finger things. But the donut, I mean, if I remember, this guy's putting ketchup on a donut.
Yeah.
Yeah, ketchup on donuts, sure, love them. I'm like, this is stuff. I wonder if that comes from something. Like if you know somebody who did that.
It's so funny though.
Because how would you come up with that on your own? And then again, you got Wendigo, this big goofy looking monster, but drawing just the jungle background. It's complicated and fun, but also a trick. I loved the issues with Wolverine. I've kind of gone over this. This is him doing that weird shadow thing that we talked about.
Right.
But I kind of like it here. And why? I don't know.
Because it just works in black and white.
It works somehow.
You understand it's like he's in shadow, but it's not like dark shadow.
Yeah. And it just visually looks interesting. You can't help but look at that. Just look at it. I always like this very black and white pose of him like hunkered over, digging into the dirt, his mask. That as a kid, when I remember seeing that, even his like face in the shadows in the jungle and his teeth shining here. Everything about this page I think looks great. Then, of course, he gets to do just another big, awesome shot of Spider-Man. It's like every page of Spider-Man he does just looks amazing. These are interesting because this is inked by Scott Williams, famous for inking over Jim Lee for decades. So it's got a much more sharp, precise ink style going on. And this one, I believe, is inked by someone else. Oh, yeah. Yeah, Magyar, Magyar. That's a guy. There was a whole issue where Liefeld, Williams, McFarlane himself, and this other guy, Rick Magyar or something like that, did some inking over him because he was, I think, sick. And this is one of his pages. And it looks McFarlane, but it looks more, it doesn't look pure McFarlane. It looks a little bit different. And it doesn't look bad. I think it looks great.
It looks awesome. This brushwork is
fantastic. This is a guy who's clearly an inker, like Scott Williams. He's got such tight control. And then we get into these right here. These are inked by Rob Liefeld. And if you know Rob Liefeld's artwork and you know those little ticks that you're looking for, you can see it. I can see it. I could see the Liefeld in both of these. And he did pretty good. He's got a heavier hand. He doesn't have like the finesse that McFarlane or Williams would have.
I have that problem.
Never fear, Spidey's here in his underwear. So good pages. McFarlane pencils, Liefeld inks. This is another Scott Williams page. And it kind of makes sense with these very sharp, precise ink lines on it.
That brushwork, how it fades.
How he gets those sharp... I'll just get pieces of paper out work and I'll get a brush and I'll just start flicking lines. And on occasion, if I got a good brush that's holding a good point, sometimes you could start approximating. I get how they do it, but you have to do it so much to be able to reproduce it on command under precise control.
Right.
Hard to do. And this page, this is a McFarlane inks. I remember the original artwork looking at all these insane little lines and then now seeing it blown up. This is back into regular size. It's not quite that big stuff. But I'm like, how does someone even, what tools do you use to get in here and start doing all these little lines? And why do you put them all in there? And what's the point? Yet it kind of makes him look old.
It does.
Because he is supposed to be, although he's not supposed to look old. It's more like, not that he looks like an old man, but he's been around for a long time. So I think of him as an old, grizzled, weathered warrior.
Right.
And that kind of fits. And you know what, on this page that they don't ever let him do anymore? They put a smoking ban. Like, we're not going to put out comics to kids. I got something to tell you guys. Kids don't read comics.
Yeah, not anymore.
Percentage-wise, it's not little kids that are watching this crap. There's some. Yeah. It's got to be some.
Yeah.
But, kids don't read these. It's grown-ass adults who grew up with them. I always thought this page was great. This awesome down angle of the characters, this funny little grimace on Wolverine's face, and then almost said Wolverine, Spiderman giving him a thumbs up right in his face. And then this great, like, off we go. You know how much this would sell for? That's 5 figures, if not 6. Yeah, all that blue line. Like, you see all that construction work, and then just throw down that pencil and then go right to inks over it. I'm pretty sure this is because it's got inks, Rick Magyar and McFarlane. This looks like not McFarlane inks, but it looks really good. And what a hard angle, like double page spread. So again, I'm going to bust out. We got 2 of my, because again, we're scanning this stuff, but you get 2 of these things side by side, and there's your blank canvas. And then you got to like spread that figure out over it, and you come up with big Spider-Man ass right in your face. I don't think this is McFarlane inks either. Just because they look... Oh, yeah. Exactly. And again, he's doing that weird line thing. I still think it kind of looks like he's in shadow, and, you know, it's selling us because he's been shot, and he's just an animal. He doesn't understand what's going on. I don't know anything about this character, honestly. I don't either. But he's portrayed here as just an animal. He might as well be a dog or a bear, but with a little bit more human thought.
A little bit. I mean, right. He found that kid.
Yeah, he understands that this is not good, but he doesn't understand that he's shot. So he's just like wandering around, splashing water on his face. I don't think he understands
he's being hunted, being blamed for the kid.
Yeah, he doesn't understand any of that. I always say, there's so many times I can say, I love this shot of Spider-Man because McFarlane just draws Spider-Man amazing all the time. And it's that guy, Magyar, doing inks on that because it looks...
Oh, just pedestrian details are just...
Yeah! These
so cool.
Textures on these buildings down here. I wonder, it looks like they freaking, I don't know, drop spaghetti sauce on it or something. These little cross-hatchy lines and the faded out like rolling hills of the forest behind them. That's not how Mcfarlane would draw that. So that's something I think is interesting. Most of the time I prefer an artist to ink himself, but sometimes when you throw someone else on their work, it becomes a whole new thing that is like, okay, that might be the primo version of them both. And there's an argument to be made for that guy doing inks on him. I always like this big close-up of Wolverine's face. Everything about this Wolverine guest star, these was 5 issues, I think it was. And this was like, Wolverine's really pissed off, and Spider-Man doesn't seem to quite get the severity of it, or at least not the level that Wolverine is. But he's like giving him 3 points of why we're going to do this, like 1, 2, and then right up to his little nose. And I like how he got his little mouth in there. I'm a moody little cuss. I promise you don't want reason 3. It's interesting, and it's both interesting and funny. Like,
well, it's funny because Wolverine is such a serious character, and Spider-Man is such
a jokester,
not serious character.
So it almost writes itself in a way. You put them together and just have them clash.
Yeah, it's like a classic comedy duo.
Yes,
because Wolverine's just playing the straight man part.
Yeah, this is fun because obviously you did the background in black, and then this is some white out gel pen, acrylic paint, some kind of white media to just throw in all these webbings.
Yeah, that's cool.
That looks really neat.
Well, and he's doing it here for these hair strands.
Yeah. I'm sure this is really time consuming. This is why he probably moved into digital, because I don't have to like draw ink and get ink all over my hands and have nibs that break and then get out some kind of white media. It's like you can just do it all in one pass.
Well, and I've watched him, like he moved into the digital realm really easily.
It seems like it. Yeah. There wasn't any kind of like growing pains. You know?
he just seemed to get it.
So yeah, we got
some artists can do that.
Yeah.
Like, when Disney went to digital, they were trying to get rid of the old artists, and they're like, okay, you've got this amount of time to learn the digital tools, and then you have to have a tryout. And they were literally trying to fire all the old guys. Wow. But they picked it up so fast.
If you're creative,
they didn't get to fire any of them.
Oh, that is really interesting. So Morbius, that was a fun. I don't think I was aware of the character vaguely, but I'd never seen him before, so I didn't know anything about him. Another one of those classic side profile shots and little small panels. Looks like the lettering fell off in that panel. So great shot, and then a big angry screamy face.
And Morpheus doesn't have a nose.
Yeah.
Or Mobius. I said Morpheus.
Morbius, the living vampire. I like the blood dripping off the bottom of the panel border there. That's interesting.
I did watch The Matrix the other day. I'll blame it on that.
And Spider-Man back in his black costume. I wish there was a few more pages of him in his black costume on here. I like that shot. Again, it's just that figure bent over and the heavy shadows on it. Works really well. I love this anatomy on this big arm extending over here. Big tricky angle. There's a page. I doubt that it's in here. There's one page that because I've actually got the original comics because I'm going to be reviewing them here soonish. So I was flipping through them, and there was one page. This is one of them. Very Spawn.
Oh yeah.
Even got the collar thing going up, and then the shredded cape. But there's another page of Morbius standing there that I think was like, well, that's very Spawn-like. But oh, you know what? There it is right there. That's one of them I was thinking of. That's him leaning into the stuff he does well. And then again, big Spider-Man splash page, but just in that black costume. God, you gotta do you do the city background and then you do the webbing over it and then white out? It doesn't look like he whited out, so it's like he draws in the webbing and then draws the backgrounds behind it. How tedious! Like you could see the whiteout, or whatever on some of these little drippy edges, but it doesn't. It looks like it's hand drawn. So you're like,
well, I wonder how loose his pencils are.
I suspect he's very loose.
I think so too, because you're not seeing a lot of blue there. I think he indicates it and then he just does it.
He just finds the drawing in the inking stage. Yeah. So and then it looks like we're getting into covers. There's a couple more in those last pages. I wish
I always think it's interesting to look at how they've done the paste ups on these.
Yeah.
Todd, like sometimes the title is a paste up and sometimes it's drawn. Mm-hmm. To me, that's interesting. The production side of it.
Yeah. Classic cover, and then he just kind of repeats the same kind of vibe on these things side by side.
And they're different drawings. He didn't just like...
Yeah, he didn't like light box. He just redrew the same basic figure. I have this comic somewhere, this one, because I remember thinking this hand coming towards you. And then you got the bubble head of Mysterio, so he's like distorted Spider-Man's image to look like it's on a piece of glass or whatever. That's that classic, that faded out hand thing. You know what's interesting is, it doesn't matter, but all these blast lines behind them, they are not linked to the same anchor point.
Oh, no.
And it doesn't matter. Yeah, you know, it's like he was just kind of throwing a ruler down.
It's not perspective, it's energy.
Yes. And so, and again, it doesn't matter, but that's just an interesting thing to notate there. Yeah, Cosmic Spider-Man. Now, this is interesting, talking about the production side of it. They have everything disrupted by the action of the page.
Yeah.
Slugging him, and he's smashing into the letter, the wording, and the text boxes even. Like, that's somebody getting really creative. I wonder if that's a McFarlane thing, like, hey, we're doing this. Classic, man. I bet that if he doesn't have this, if he were to try to sell it, I mean, outrageous figures. Somebody would pay for that. I've actually got this issue sitting right next to my bed. I was flipping through it just recently. Look how they chopped the ever-living crap out of it. Just sheared it right off. And getting into the Wolverine one.
Well, and that, go back to that. That's not scissors. That's not like a paper cutter. That's a straight edge that they're using, because somebody just went.
Yeah, and man, if you're not careful, you'd chop off the artwork, and then really weird that they do things like that. But so we're coming up on the end of it. Probably going to be my longest video ever, and that's fine because this stuff just looks so great. I can't help but want to stare at it. I always like this on what he's doing the covers of these, but the X-Men in shadow like that, and like Cyclops' little visor glinting.
That's cool.
That was really fun. Oh,
yep.
That one. I think I heard him talking about this. He sold it to somebody for really cheap, if not maybe giving it to somebody for free. And he's like,
well, yeah.
Not that he feels bad about it, but
to Peter.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Holy crap. Whoever has that is sitting on a big chunk of cash. But then how do you ever, you know, that's interesting.
That's the kind of thing you can only sell at auction.
Yeah, right? For real. And then holy crap, that is so good. What a great end page. Super close-up of that panel I was talking about that looked really good. Look at these just rough ink lines. Like this little scribble here. Just...
Well, yeah, and then you can kind of see how rough his pencils really are.
Yeah, if he's just going straight to blue pencil and then he just finds it in the ink line.
Which is, honestly, that's how I work.
It is how I work, too. I can't get super detailed.
But, like, some stuff, I have to detail it in pencil. I have to work it out.
Yeah.
And other stuff,
you can just go crazy on it. All right, well, here we are at 53 minutes into this. What a great book. This is amazing. Richard, thank you for bringing this. This is so freaking incredible. I mean, it's so damn huge. So glad to have a chance to look at that. This was fun. So I guess that's all I've got to say about this, Richard, unless you got anything else?
I have nothing more to add.
All right, well, then we're done. So thanks for tuning in, everybody, and we'll see you next time.